This episode is sponsored by Micro Focus and the LoadRunner Solutions family. That includes LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. You know, performance matters. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners in the world? Join that community at community.microfocus.com, scan the QR code, and check out the LoadRunner family page on performance engineering, as well as their YouTube playlist that we've got links for in the show notes on smcjournal.com as well as YouTube. This episode is sponsored by Performance Lab. They're a provider of premier load and performance testing services for enterprises in all industries. They focus on a robust methodology, tools, and the experienced engineers that know what they're doing. Since 2008, they have built a reputation for reliability worldwide. BoomQ is their own innovative performance testing platform. However, they also consult around many industry standard load testing tools like JMeter, LoadRunner, and others. Find out more at performancelabus.com. This podcast is sponsored by Oracy Software. For over 20 years, Oracy, a DevSecOps innovator, has helped companies innovate, accelerate, and automate the entire software development lifecycle. Oracy AppSec and Oracy Cloud Solutions and Services offer full lifecycle support and integration to ensure scalability of transformative applications. Also, they're the makers of Oracy Labs, the train anyone, anywhere, anytime AWS cloud-native virtual e-learning platform. Oracy works with hundreds of global brands as customers and partners, including Fortune 500 companies across a variety of industries. Find out more at oracy.com. Hey everybody, it's Scott Moore, and we are covering KubeCon 2022. I'm at the Akamas booth with my friend Luca Forni, CEO of Akamas. Welcome to the show.
Ciao Scott, thank you everybody. So thanks to join us in this exciting show.
I've learned a lot. I've been here. This is our last day at KubeCon, so we're here at the beginning of this. So we haven't seen a lot of people here yet, but they're coming. So tell me about your impression of KubeCon this year.
Yeah, always it's a great conference. We can see a lot of new idea coming up around the Kubernetes world, and now it is becoming the standard, the operating system for the cloud IT ecosystem. So that's great, and we can see a lot of new interest around the performance monitoring area. So a lot of AI ops for Kubernetes too. We can see a lot of security stuff around everything that is protecting your Kubernetes environment. So that's a tremendous impact for our customers. So yeah, that's great. A lot of open source projects, of course, a lot of new upcoming open source projects. So yeah, that's really great.
So like I see the words AI ops, I see the word observability a lot. The security part of it, and scaling and resiliency, and whether you're actually a full commercial product or you're enhancing some of the cloud native computing foundations, open source projects, there's a real effort to optimize and get this Kubernetes thing kind of managed in a, where you can wrap your hands around it now. Would you agree?
Yeah. Especially automation is becoming our standard, so you cannot rely on manual activity. It's not only a matter of performance, like what we introduced in the Akamas approach, so creating something that is totally autonomous, but you will see a lot of automation in all the part, in all the aspects and the workflows of managing your Kubernetes application cloud native ecosystem. So yeah.
We always talk about managing and making the system performant, but I'm also seeing a lot about controlling the cost and optimizing the cost of the deployment as well. Do you see that as a big theme?
Yeah, I think cutting the cost or managing, controlling the cost, be aware, and creating efficiency also for a matter of sustainability will become one of the major trends in the next year, because right now it's a new world, so all the customer, all the IT IT staffs are trying to now implementing new stuff on Kubernetes, on cloud native solutions, but there's a matter of cost, so this flexibility, this capability to immediately add new stuff, new thing to your IT services has a drawback, and the drawback is not be able to control the cost. So what customers are saying to us, I really scale about the fact that it seems like what happened a lot of years ago when we moved from a physical server to the virtual one. So everything was so cool, but at the end you lose the control because creating a new server is something like a snap. It's not providing a new physical server plugin in your rack. And now we are seeing something that is exactly the same, but like 10x. So the capability to, thanks to our automation, to immediately create new stuff in your IT ecosystem, capability to auto-scale, it's great. Seems that you can support more unsustainable load from your end user, so everything is autonomous, but at the end, what we can see, what we hear from customer is that if you do not have the right tools in place, the right process, you lose the control and your cost will explode. So yeah, that's definitely one of the main trends for the next years.
Completely agree. For the past couple of days, you've been talking to various people as they come past the booth. What kind of conversations are they wanting to have with you here?
Yeah, there are mainly the performance. So when they come to Akamas booth, they say, okay, I see a lot of companies that are claiming to address the cost optimization part. You say that you address the cost optimization, but also the performance and resiliency of the Kubernetes environment. Why you are different compared to the others? So we can exactly explain which is the different approach the Akamas use that can solve all these topics, all these pain the customer, not only addressing the cost management, the cost control, but we can address the cost control thanks to the fact that we exactly address the performance and resiliency and the capability of make your application work in a smooth way, use less resources, and that's bring you to have less cost at the end. So I think this part is one of the important pillar of our approach, our proposition, go-to-market strategy, the capability to get benefits about cost by focusing on our capability to get better performance, get a better resilience, so stay behind your SLO, so do not violate your SLO. So it's a different approach that as the final results get a great cost control.
And these people that are asking you about this, these are the people who really need their problem solved right now. These are the people that actually implement your solution, right? It's not just pie in the sky like, hey, we're just looking at how you might transform us. It's, I need this now.
Because I think in the right now, one of the trends that we observed in the last years is that having the cost control, that's something that seems very in a high level over the organization, like the CFO or the FinOps, let me say, now starts from the beginning, so from the development. It's not something that it's in a total different area of your company. So since the beginning also DevOps, SRE guys need to take care about the performance of the application, the capability to use in a wise way the resources that they have in terms of virtual machine or Kubernetes environment, POS services, because every single difference, every single changes in the code can produce a great impact, a big impact on the cost. So let's say it's small compared to the past. So in the past you purchase the server, when you have finished the resources, finish it, so you cannot go over the kind of cost. Right now everything is the scale up phase, is the capability to auto scale. If you create a mess in your software, you are not limited in some way, so you can grow so much in a technical point of view, but at the end you can grow so much in the cost. And if you do not have the right tool, it's very hard to manage it, figure out it, or be alerted about that in a snap and avoid to have big impacts on the cost.
I imagine the reason why a lot of these vendors exist is because there's been several companies who have had major surprises at the end of the month when they receive their bill, and that's why they're looking for that solution. Let's talk about Akamas just a little bit more and dive into that, because the reason why I'm such a fan is because I think there's going to be a new kind of measurement. I've been saying this a lot lately. I've always said that performance testing and tuning, the tuning aspect is not just about making something faster, but more efficient, getting the most out of what you have. And I think maybe a new measurement or metric that people will have is how big of a footprint my code, my app actually takes, not just in how much time it takes, but the energy level. Do you think that's where we're going?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that at the end we are also a lot about how much is the energy impact or footprint of every single type of coding language. So we are seeing a lot of trend and let me say attention at the end on those topics that was in the past was never heard about. So I think the capability to be super efficient is a matter of a must for all the company right there also, because we have to take care about the environment, of course. So that's something that I think also in terms of having the right test environment in place that avoid you to consume huge resources, having a good right sizing of your application, having a good quality development life cycle with all the, let me say, check in terms of quality gates or something like that will be mandatory more than in the past. But because right now everything is faster than the past, you need to automate all the step of this process, or you will be blind or not able to control this kind of aspect of your.
I think you nailed an important point there, because in the past we were able to run load testing, and people say, well, if we run load testing, we can do tuning while we test, we can figure this out. You don't have the time, the systems are more complex, and you have to do more with less at this point. And this is why I really like Akamas, because you work in conjunction with load testing tools, but you're also able to help them get to that point they would manually have to get to by individually tuning parameters and figuring out themselves, helping them figure it out in sometimes hours or days that used to take months. And that's going to be the differentiator between not using something like Akamas and doing it yourself, right?
Exactly. So we can support right now both the pre-production environment, the production environment. So if you have a good stress test strategy, you can use Akamas like a booster and the head of automation in all the process. So Akamas can drive your load test, your stress test. It can be inserted into your CI, CD, and pipeline strategy in order to be sure that every single change in your application is performance tested before going in production, thanks to the automation and the AI that Akamas brings in your capabilities. So it's like a booster for give to your devs, DevOps, SRE a superpower that they can be like a real hero that can, in a snap, control everything, and something that was not possible in a manual approach. It requires months for a single release. Now we are talking about a matter of minutes or hours. But at the same time, we know that in a shift-right approach, all the customers also want to have control and continuously double-check performance, resiliency, and cost of the production environment. That's why we just introduced the capability to change things directly in the production system. So with the live version, 3.0 version we introduced a couple of months ago, we are able to let Akamas to improve your system directly in production. So grabbing data from your traditional AIOps monitoring stuff and see how the system reacts, how the system is behaving, and then let Akamas start changing things like a super ops guys that continuously tune everything, have a double check on everything, and improve at the end the performance of your system, cutting out the cost.
Live production automation, or live production optimization, I guess is what we would call that. So that's great. So last question. You've been around, you've looked at everything. What's the most interesting thing or the craziest thing, or what's the thing that's been highlighted other than the Akamas booth here at KubeCon?
So I think that what most impacted me was the fastness of everything. The velocity on the new idea come ups in the open source world or in the startup world around Kubernetes, and how they can create an impact for a lot of customers really in a snap. So if we think in the past that we need 3, 5, 10 years for a technology to become mature. Right now is a matter of a couple of years. You can have a technology that come up, became the standard. If you think like Docker, that's in a snap became the standard, and now is on the decline way because there are a new technology, a new idea, a new open source project that reuse all the lesson learned, the better things that they know, but creating something new. So everything will be fast in the future, and right now we can see that it's incredible, because we can see that in a 6 months, so we attended the Valencia KubeCon, and I saw a lot of different company coming up around Kubernetes, and right now in a matter of 6 months there are 10, 12, 20 new companies, startups that rise up in a snap, in a matter of months, and create some new idea, trying to filling the gap, filling this kind of gap in all the areas: security, performance, automation, capability to create backup and recovery system, or everything that needs to have your Kubernetes environment working the properly way, and that's super fast, and that's tremendous.
You're not the first person to mention that. Speed to adoption and speed to maturity are faster than ever for these, especially Kubernetes and surrounding technologies. So that's great, and it's good that that's a kind of a common theme.
And I think that that is possible thanks to the fact there are some community or association like the CNCF that is able to bring up all these new open source or startup idea in one unique place to make them, create the brand awareness, interact each other, create the link, and create new idea that are on top of the new idea. So it's a matter of creating a new ecosystem that I think it will not be possible if you do not have like a master that govern everything. That's why the CNCF approach, I think, is the best one right now.
Great stuff. I'm at the Akamas booth with my friend Stefano Dani of the Akamas, great Akamas company. He is the CTO of the company.
Yeah, right.
So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for hosting me again, Scott.
So
it's a pleasure.
Exciting. Was this what you thought it was going to be? Did you learn anything while you were here?
Yeah, it's very exciting. I think that there are two main topics that I'm seeing very frequent here about the startups. One is about security, and the other is about cost optimization. Mm-hmm. So literally, also yesterday we were talking with an analyst. We had a session with them, and actually also they were impressed with respect just to last KubeCon, how many new companies about cost optimization there are today. It's really mind-boggling.
Everybody is saying that. They're like, there's new booths, there's new logos I've never seen before. Where are all these companies coming from? So what that means to me is Kubernetes has been adopted very fast, but it's also probably created some opportunities to provide new solutions that we didn't need before, right?
Yeah, exactly. On one side, there was also a report from CNCF last year. On one side, there's this increasing adoption, which is kind of natural, so it's becoming, as we know, the operating system for the cloud. On the other side of things, people are realizing that it's actually hard to make sure that Kubernetes run well with a required level of performance and also cost efficiency at the same time without having also reliability issues. So that is becoming very, very key.
Do you think that now that everybody has begun moving over to Kubernetes and container-based applications, that they're more aware of how efficient they need to make a system than they were before, or is it just let's just throw it out there and see if it works? I mean, are they thinking about what they're doing more now?
Well, actually, I think the opposite, because actually I think also the responsibility, traditionally also cost optimization was kind of responsibility for operational teams. Now what we see is a kind of a transition towards application development teams. So now the application developers themselves has actually the responsibility to properly configure all the parameters. For example, how big are my CPU requests and limits, which at the end of the day are what drives the actual cost of the cluster. So that is big, and what we have seen is that pretty much all the companies that are relying on this model, basically the developers just throw more hardware. So just make the container bigger in the hope of not having performance issues, not being called in the night to solve reliability issues, but they completely don't care about the cost. So at least don't have this kind of way.
Until the bill comes.
Until the bill comes, exactly. So having the visibility of the cost is one thing. So with the Kubernetes, of course, you need to have visibility more granular, because you need to understand which are the containers that drives the cost, not just the VM. What are the VMs now? You need to be more granular. So we see a lot of solution. Also, Open Cost is an interesting initiative, open source initiative that is able able to do that. But next question then becomes, how do I actually optimize the cost? That is the real issues.
Right. So this is where Akamas comes in, right? So you're able to look at the output of an APM product or an observability product, take that information and use it to create a way to optimize that system, that container, that Java application. You're able to take that. And so how does that work?
Yeah, actually, the way it works is that we actually monitor the application. So we gather data from observability tools, we collect metrics. So the first phase is what we call we observe the system. So Akamas Live, which is the new capability that we introduced also in our recent podcast together, is what enables that. So Akamas will observe how the application are working in production. So especially microservices on Kubernetes, and actually understand the patterns of the workloads. So for example, Akamas understand if you have a peak, what is the best configuration to actually suggest during the peak with respect to during the valleys. So the first phase is the observation. Then Akamas AI actually analyze all the parameters, all the configuration. So that is very key, because in order to reduce cost, there are several approaches. You can actually fix the code, you can buy bigger hardware for sure, that's pretty much what everybody's have done for decades, but there's a kind of new space which is the configuration. Especially for Kubernetes, that is what drives the cost. So what are my CPU and memory requests and limits, but especially what runs within the container, like the JVM. That is actually what drives the memory usage of my pods, for example. So what Akamas does is actually, we call application-aware optimization. It's that we configure best not only the container, but also what runs within the container. So I think that is key. And the other thing, we are talking with a lot of SREs in these days that appreciate that much the capability of Akamas to actually reduce the size of the container. For example, I need to reduce my cost, typical scenario, but in doing that, it's very easy to actually start making the application run slower. So there are a lot of, in a way, posts around the internet about the infamous problem of CPU throttling. So it's very, in a way, tricky, the way you need to configure things, the way resource management in general works in Kubernetes, so people are struggling with that. So when you, for example, decrease the size of your container, it's very, very easy to make the container run slower on one side, or even have reliability issues like out of memory. So all of a sudden your container will stop working, basically. So Akamas has a new approach to solve this kind of problem, meaning that we observe application performance metric. So we gather those metrics from APM tools, and that becomes actually a key signal that is taken into consideration by AI to actually, in a way, reduce the cost on one side by doing that safely, without impacting application performance or without causing actually out-of-memory errors. That is key.
So I see AI everywhere here now, and it's almost like becoming sort of a buzzword, but I know Akamas, we've talked about this before, you really do have true AI running on this. My question is really, do you think moving forward, how we're seeing the adoption of Kubernetes, how systems are getting more and more complex all the time, will you be able to function without AI helping get you to the end result root cause faster?
Yeah, great question, Scott. I think that the reason why we see this kind of widespread usage of AI is due to the amount of data that you have today, the complexity. So also the movement towards microservices, what we are just talking about. So CPU limits, CPU throttling, out of memory, configuration of the containers is just for one microservice. So typically what we see, for example, one monolithic application now becomes 40, 50 microservices. That's what we see with our customer. So think about the explosion. So literally, customers today are running with thousands of microservices. And it's also very dynamic. You have releases, new releases of application pretty much daily, even if not hourly. So think about how dynamics is becoming the environment. So also auto-scaling, etc. So how can you actually keep track of those, and how can you actually able to optimize those environments without some help of AI? AI is actually much better suited than the human brain to analyze big amount of data and find patterns. So that is why I think there's this kind of attention towards AI. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that AI is not enough.
Why?
Why? Because actually you need to actually understand the technology. You need to understand, for example, how to best tune your containers in order to avoid production issues. So you can simply throw, I don't know, terabytes of data towards AI and hope that the best configuration will work fine. So our approach is to combine AI with domain knowledge. So we work a lot for the last 20 years in optimizing many enterprise applications, Java application, virtual machine, etc. So this kind of experience needs to be, in a way, coupled with AI in order to make sure that the recommendations for the configuration are actually reducing the cost, but they are also safe, because we are talking about production environments, so people don't want to mess up with production, so people want to trust the recommendations. So that is why you can simply, in a way, use AI or brute forcing approaches in the hope of optimizing cost.
As you go forward, the companies who use AI to build the best rule sets and the best relationship mapping, I think, are going to be the leaders in this category. So let me kind of ask you this: other than Akamas, what's something else that you've seen here, or maybe there's another company or another technology or something that surprised you that was interesting to you that you've seen?
Yeah, one thing that in general what I see is that there are actually pretty much more than a dozen of cost optimization companies right here. The approach that I see they're using is pretty much actually based on simple resource utilization metrics. Mm-hmm. So that kind of approach, so let's say I'm using, 10% of my CPU that I have allocated to my container, let's just shrink the size. So this kind of approach is actually not going to work due to the problem of throttling, etc. So that is becoming complex to manage with those approaches. So
it's too simple. They're simple.
Too simplistic, and actually you need to be aware of what is happening to application performance and what actually drives the consumption in terms of what runs within the container. One technology that is very interesting here is the use of eBPF. So
yes, I hear a lot about that.
Yeah. It's actually a technology deep into the kernel, Linux kernel, that actually enables kind of a new brand way to do observability, and also it's being very used a lot in security also. So the ability to extract metrics deep into the application or the databases, actually I see that will become much more important also for AI to actually have deeper metrics to actually do better prediction towards, for example, what will happen in the future to my performance or my application. That is a trend that I see very, very interesting.
I see that too. I think we need to do some reporting on eBPF. I see it more in the security realm, but to me, the performance is just as important. But it also has a very low overhead, being able to provide these deep level metrics, but without actually overloading the system the way it has other technologies have in the past. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So that is key, and then it's been standardized into the Linux kernel. So that is a way that actually is becoming better and better over time, and also has the ability not just work at the kernel level, but also start tracking the application level too. So that is key from something that is so low level, ability to see actually the full stack is very key, is very interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stefano, for being on the show. We'll be covering more of KubeCon 2022, so stay with us.
Thanks. Thank you, Scott.